Have you ever sat in complete darkness and then someone switches on the light, and in that instant you realize the room you're in looks nothing like what you had imagined all along? That moment, the split second when reality rushes in and tears apart the image you've carefully built in your mind, is a feeling most of us never truly experience in our real lives. Not because we lack intelligence, but because we've never realized that the room was dark to begin with. We go to work, fall in love, raise children, argue, hurt each other, then forgive each other, all within a darkness we mistake for light. We believe we are awake, rational, and understanding of life. But the truth is, from the moment we are born until now, layers of tinted lenses have been placed over our eyes, by our parents, by society, by wounds that never fully healed, and we see the entire world through their colors without ever knowing it. Psychologists call this cognitive blind spots. Spiritual teachers call it ignorance. As for me, after delving deeply into this subject, I prefer a simpler name. It's the reason we keep repeating what we don't want, loving those who hurt us, and searching for peace in the very places where it has never existed. Level 1. Subtle blindness. There is a strange paradox that psychology has long confirmed. The most dangerous people are not those who knowingly do wrong. The most dangerous are often the kind, sincere, even intelligent individuals who have no idea that they are wrong. The first layer of blindness, and the heaviest of all 7, is precisely that state, not knowing that you do not know. Imagine someone raised in a family where they are constantly told, "Men don't cry. Emotions are weakness. If you just try hard enough, you will succeed." That person grows up to be diligent, never complains, never asks for help, and takes pride in it. They don't realize they are carrying a deep wound inside. They don't see that this so-called strength is actually armor, hiding fear. And whenever someone close tries to reach in, they push them away, then wonder why they remain alone. That is the destructive power of the first layer of blindness. It does not appear as an obvious enemy. It hides within what we call our nature. This is just who I am, or I'm just being realistic. It is disguised so perfectly that its victims are usually the last to recognize its existence. Psychologists call this a cognitive blind spot. Interestingly, the term blind spot originally comes from the anatomy of the human eye. There is a point in our vision where no photoreceptor cells exist, so any light that falls there goes unrecorded. We are completely blind at that point, yet we never see a dark gap in our field of vision, because the brain automatically fills in the missing space with surrounding information, creating the illusion of a complete picture. The human mind works in exactly the same way. What we do not know, the brain fills in, with assumptions, with past experiences, with fear or expectation. And we look at that patched-together image, mistake it for reality, and make the most important decisions of our lives based on it. People marry the wrong person because of this blind spot. They stay in the wrong job for 10 years because of it. They give their love to those who do not deserve it and reject those who truly care because of it. So the real question is not, do you have blind spots? The only question worth asking is, where are your blind spots, and how have they been quietly shaping your life all along? Level 2, knowing but not living. There's a type of person you've almost certainly encountered at least once in your life. They speak beautifully about gratitude, yet constantly complain. They can explain the importance of forgiveness with great clarity, yet are still holding on to resentment toward a loved one from 3 years ago. They read books on meditation, psychology, and philosophy, but the moment pressure hits, they react exactly like someone who has never read a single page. And the strange part is, they're not being fake. They genuinely believe in what they say. But between what they know and how they live, there is a gap wide enough to fit an entire lifetime inside it. This is the second layer of blindness, more subtle than the first, because it hides behind the light of knowledge. The American psychologist Abraham Maslow once said something that few people truly notice. Knowing without acting is in fact just a more refined form of not knowing. Our brains are remarkably skilled at creating the illusion that understanding something intellectually means we have already changed it in our lives. But reality is the opposite. Understanding and living are two entirely different paths, processed in different regions of the brain, and becoming fluent in one does not mean you can walk the other. Think about it. Almost everyone knows that comparing themselves to others is harmful. Almost everyone knows that excessive worry solves nothing. Almost everyone knows that health matters more than money. Yet every night before bed, how many of us still scroll through social media, quietly comparing our lives to others? How many lie awake, losing sleep over things that haven't even happened? How many sacrifice their health chasing numbers in a bank account? Knowledge does not automatically become transformation. That is the truth this layer of blindness so cleverly conceals. People at this level often feel like they are progressing because they are learning. They read another book, listen to another podcast, enroll in another course, and each time the brain releases dopamine, creating a sense of satisfaction, as if something meaningful has been accomplished. But in reality, they are only collecting maps, never truly stepping into the journey. The map is not the territory, and knowing the way is not the same as walking it. The only thing that can break through this layer of blindness is not more knowledge, but a moment of honesty deep enough to ask, of everything I've learned, how much of it am I truly living? Every single day. Level 3, living on old programming. When a child grows up in a family where love is always conditional, praised only when they achieve high scores, hugged only when they behave, noticed only when they please the adults, their young brain learns a crucial lesson. To be loved, you must first be worthy. That lesson is etched deep within, not in words, not in logic, but in emotion, in the body, in automatic responses formed through thousands of repetitions during the earliest years of life. Then the child grows up, becomes an adult with a job, relationships, and a life of their own. But that early lesson remains, quietly running beneath every decision, every reaction, every choice. They work themselves to exhaustion out of fear of not being good enough. They struggle to say no, afraid of losing affection. They constantly seek approval from others without understanding why they need it so badly. And when asked, they simply say, "That's just who I am." This is the third layer of blindness, living according to a script written long ago by other people in circumstances that no longer exist. Neuroscience has shown that much of adult behavior does not arise from conscious choice, but from response patterns formed before the age of 7. 7, when we barely understood what the world even was, yet the brain had already drafted its first blueprint of who we are, how the world works, and what we must do to survive safely. And that blueprint, no matter how outdated, continues to be reprinted every single day for the rest of our lives, unless we become aware of it. What makes this layer especially difficult to recognize is that it feels completely natural. No one feels like they are being controlled by the past. People simply feel like they are reacting normally to what's happening. The person who often gets angry doesn't realize they are replaying a sense of helplessness from childhood. The one who withdraws in relationships doesn't see that they are protecting themselves from a wound that happened 20 years ago. They are just doing what feels right in the moment. But what feels right and what is truly right are not the same. The old programming isn't evil. It once protected us when we were small and had no other way to cope with the world. The problem is, we are no longer that child. The circumstances have changed. The people who once hurt us may not even be here anymore. And yet the program keeps running, issuing warnings, triggering old reactions in entirely new situations. And so, without realizing it, we carry that child from long ago into every conversation, every relationship, every decision we make as adults. Level 4. The illusion of control. In 1977, psychologist Ellen Langer conducted a simple experiment with striking results. She gave two groups of people lottery tickets that were completely random. One group was handed tickets, while the other was allowed to choose their own from a stack. She then asked each person how much they would be willing to sell their ticket for. The group that chose their own tickets demanded 4 times the price of those who were simply given one, despite the odds of winning being exactly the same. Simply because they had chosen, they believed they had more control over a purely random event. Langer called this the illusion of control, and that is precisely the name of the fourth layer of blindness. Human beings fear uncertainty more than almost anything else. Our brains are wired through evolution to seek safety, and in its most primitive sense, safety means knowing what will happen next. So when faced with a world that is inherently unpredictable, we unconsciously construct a story in which we are in control. That story feels far more comforting than the truth. And what is that truth? That most of the things that matter most in our lives are beyond our control. We cannot control what our health will be like next year. We cannot control whether the person we love will continue to love us. We cannot control the economy, natural disasters, or even the very first thought that appears in our minds each morning when we wake. But instead of accepting this, people at this level pour all their energy into trying to control the uncontrollable. They try to manage their partner's emotions by saying the right words, doing the right things, anticipating every possible situation. They attempt to control how they are perceived by others to the point that they no longer dare to live authentically. They plan every detail step by step, only to collapse when a single, unexpected variable appears. And each time that happens, rather than realizing they placed expectations on the uncontrollable, they blame circumstances, other people, or worse, themselves for not having controlled things well enough. This attachment to control doesn't just create anxiety. It quietly erodes relationships in ways that are hard to detect. When we try to control others, no matter how well-intentioned, what we are really saying is, I don't trust you, I don't trust life, and I only feel safe when everything unfolds according to my will. No one truly feels love when they are being controlled, no matter how much the controller cares. The deepest paradox of this layer is that the very attempt to control often creates the exact outcome people fear most. The tighter the grip, the more slips away. The harder you try to hold on, the faster it escapes. Letting go is not the same as giving up. Letting go is recognizing that some things were never meant to be held in your hands, and that accepting this is where real peace begins. Level 5. Seeking outside. There is an old parable about a man who, every night, stands under a streetlight searching for his lost key. A neighbor, noticing this, asks where he dropped it. The man points into the darkness and says, "Inside that house." Confused, the neighbor asks, "Then why don't you go inside and look?" The man calmly replies, "Because out here there's light. In there it's too dark." It sounds absurd, but it is exactly what most of us are doing with our happiness every single day. We search for peace in a bigger house, a better job, a more perfect relationship, distant travels, delicious meals, and the approval of others. Not because these things are bad, but because we believe they are the source of happiness, that once we have enough of them, we will finally feel okay. And this is the fifth layer of blindness, one of the most common and one that modern society powerfully reinforces. Neuroscience has confirmed what meditation masters understood thousands of years ago. The human brain has an extraordinary ability to adapt to all conditions, both good and bad. Researchers call this the hedonic treadmill. When you achieve what you want, happiness arises, but only briefly before returning to its baseline. Then the brain begins chasing the next goal, bigger, better, more, and the cycle continues endlessly. People buy a new car, and 6 months later, it no longer brings them joy. They fall in love, believing they've found the perfect person, only to slowly notice flaws as the initial excitement fades. They reach a dream position, only to start worrying about the next one, not because they are greedy or ungrateful, but because they are looking for the right thing in the wrong place. Viktor Frankl, the psychologist who survived Nazi concentration camps, wrote that he met people in the most extreme suffering who still retained inner calm and dignity, while others living in comfort fell into despair. The difference was not their external circumstances, but what was happening within. Happiness is not a destination waiting at the end of the road once you have everything. It is the quality of the journey you are living right now, created from within, from how you perceive, from how you relate to yourself and to others. No one can give it to you, and nothing can bring it to you if you are not ready to receive it from the inside. This layer of blindness does not break when we abandon everything outside. It breaks in the moment we truly turn inward and ask, if all of that disappeared today, what remains of me? Level 6, the rigid ego. Try a small experiment. The next time someone criticizes you, even gently, even accurately, pay attention to the very first thing that happens inside your body. Does something tighten? Does a wave of defensiveness rise? Does a quiet inner voice begin searching for reasons to push back? If so, you've just touched the 6th layer of blindness, one of the most subtle and persistent in this entire journey. The ego is not the villain. It was formed to protect us. From a young age, we begin constructing an image of who we are. I am intelligent. I am kind. I am hardworking. I am someone who doesn't make mistakes. That image becomes an anchor, helping us feel safe in an unpredictable world. The problem begins when we no longer have that image, but become it. When you fully identify with your ego, anything that threatens that image is processed by the brain as a real danger. A piece of feedback feels like an attack. A different opinion feels like rejection. A small failure becomes proof that you are not enough. And to defend yourself, you counterattack, justify, blame, or withdraw entirely from any situation that might shake that image. Philosopher Alan Watts once described the rigid ego as a person walking through life in a suit of armor. That armor protects them from being hurt, but it also prevents them from feeling warmth, from truly being embraced, from touching anything fully. They are completely protected and completely alone at the same time. People living at this level are often hard to recognize because from the outside they can appear confident, even strong. They have clear opinions. They are not easily swayed. They seem to know what they want. But beneath that certainty lies an old fear that if they admit they are wrong, if they change their views, if they let others see their imperfections, they will lose something essential. And what they fear losing is the very image of themselves they have spent a lifetime building. The tragedy is that a rigid ego does not protect us from pain. It only delays it and makes it heavier when it finally arrives. Life will always find ways to break what is rigid. A stiff branch snaps in the storm, while a flexible one bends and then straightens again. This layer of blindness begins to dissolve, not when we eliminate the ego, but when we first realize that we are not the ego, that beneath all the images, labels, and stories we tell about ourselves, there is something deeper, wider, something that does not need protection because it has never been something that can be destroyed. Level 7, total denial. In psychology, there is an effect named after two researchers, David Dunning and Justin Kruger. In 1999, they uncovered something that sounds paradoxical, yet has been confirmed again and again. The least competent people in a given domain are often the most confident in their abilities. Not because they are arrogant, but because they do not yet know enough to recognize how much they lack. To know that you don't know, you must first know something. This is the essence of the 7th layer of blindness, the heaviest one, the one through which light struggles most to pass. People at this level are not merely failing to seek the truth, they have concluded that they already possess it. They do not feel blind because within their worldview, they are the ones who see most clearly, while those around them are the ones being deceived. Any conflicting information is automatically rejected, not through careful consideration, but through an instant reflex, like an immune system expelling foreign invaders. What makes this layer especially dangerous is not only that those within it cannot free themselves, it's that they often pull others into the same darkness. A father convinced that his way of raising children is absolutely right will shut out feedback from his children, his partner, even experts, and continue hurting the people he loves most while believing he is doing what's best for them. A leader who believes they are always right will surround themselves with agreement until reality eventually collapses in a way that can no longer be denied. Psychologist Carl Jung once wrote that the most dangerous person is the one who is unconscious of their own shadow, because they will project that darkness onto the world and call it truth. And that is exactly what happens at this level. People do not see themselves as being in denial. They see themselves as defending what is right in a world that simply isn't wise enough to understand. But life has its own way of dealing with denial. It is patient. It repeats the same lesson in different forms, louder each time, more painful each time, until it becomes impossible to look away. Every broken marriage, every fractured relationship, every missed opportunity is a knock from reality. The only question is, how many knocks will it take before someone finally opens the door? The seventh layer does not break through logic. It does not break through evidence. It only breaks through pain deep enough to shake the foundation, or through a rare moment of grace, when someone suddenly sees themselves from the outside and realizes that the story they've been telling about who they are was never the whole truth. And that moment, no matter how late it arrives, is always a beginning.